Welcome back into a double dose of Prime Sports World coming to you on a Thursday. On the earlier show, we gave out our fantasy football awards. TJ, don't start. On this show, we're going to be breaking down another NFL offseason preview. This time, the Arizona Cardinals. And they got quite the decisions to make this season. Of course, your host, David On Point. Right there is Israel Rivera, the CEO of Prime Sports World. And my co-host, Mr. T.J. Hopkins. Welcome into the show, gentlemen. Also, please like, share, and subscribe. I will share the link also to our streaming platforms. So if you do miss us live, you can also watch us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. Welcome into the show, gentlemen. Happy Thursday. How is everybody?
Pissed off.
Oh, the Bulls.
Oh yeah, those bulls are just not good, TJ.
Well, we talked about them yesterday. If you watched that episode of the crossover.
And you know what, David? You right. If that's how they gonna play, send this shit to the moon, bro.
Yes, sir.
Like seriously, man. Like, how the hell y'all get up to play a team like Brooklyn or Milwaukee? You have a winning record against them, but you give Charlotte their sixth home win all season? Yeah, send this shit to the moon. This shit gotta go, bro.
But here,
bye-bye.
We're here to talk about the Arizona Cardinals, and of course, they have a lot of decisions to make. A head coach, what are they going to do at stopgap quarterback situation with the Kyler Murray scenario? Probably not coming back until maybe next season, potentially even. And they do have.
When did he get hurt?
He got hurt pretty late. I think it was like week 10 or 11. Let me pull out that exact date, but I wouldn't imagine that he'll be ready for the start of next season unless he.
It would take a miracle. I mean, like, crazier things have happened, right? Like, we've seen, what's his name, Cam Akers come back 6 months off a way worse injury. A torn Achilles, in my opinion, is worse than a.
So Kyler Murray didn't have surgery on his ACL until January 3rd. And that's we're talking about.
That is late.
He injured it on December 12th. I guess the swelling was so bad that he couldn't have the surgery until January 3rd.
That's damn near a month after the end. Oh my god!
Yeah, so he basically 12-month rehab. Talking about 12-month rehab, I can't imagine they'll have him for this season. So they got to figure out what they're going to do at quarterback.
No, it's going to take a miracle.
Yeah,
it's going to take a miracle.
But yeah, draft capital. This team it could be. This team unfortunately only has five draft picks in this year's draft. They're picking third overall after what was probably one of the most disappointing teams this past season. We're going to be doing a whole show about most disappointing teams in the National Football League here in the next week, probably at some point. But we have some downtime in between the championship and the Super Bowl. But yeah, there's some notable free agents. Byron Murphy, Kelvin Beachum, Justin Pugh, Greg Dozich, who wide receiver, and AJ Green was solid in spurts for them this season. Cap space, they're expected to have $20.3 million in projected cap space. The head coach is still to be determined. I haven't even heard who they're even interviewing for this job. They've been pretty quiet on their end. Their GM is Monte Ozenfort.
They're definitely going to bring. Oh, my bad. Go ahead, bro.
Team president Michael Bidwell, who's been there for a while. But yeah, the big question here is what they're going to do at quarterback. What are they going to do at head coach? How should they approach this draft?
The GM they hired is new, right? They just got a new GM.
I believe so, yes, because they fired Steve Heim, because of all of
I was going to say, out of all those free agents that you talk about, Byron Murphy's definitely the guy that you have to re-sign.
You got to keep him.
I mean, you got to keep him. I mean, he was easily your best cornerback last year. Got to keep him.
I mean, it's one of two ways you can go. Like you said, you only have 5 picks for the entire draft. It's tough. It's tough to add contributions to a team with only 5 picks. It's rare that you get a situation like Seattle got, right? Seattle only had 5 picks. They hit on all 5 picks. Yep. That's rare. That is rare. Like, you're not going to hit on all 5 because all 5 of those picks up in Seattle were day one starters and day one contributors. That's rare. Not going to happen often. So if I'm Arizona,
never.
Right. Like, if I'm Arizona, you got to have those uncomfortable conversations. You got to consider, all right, what's the market for DeAndre Hopkins? You got to have that conversation. what's the market for? I don't know who their top lineman is, offensive lineman that is. I mean,
Billy Price, I guess, at center.
What's the market for Isaiah Simmons? You got you got to have.
I wouldn't trade him. He had his best season as a pro.
But it don't matter, bro. Like you got to have that conversation. That conversation has to be had.
And I mean, JJ Watts, because this is going to be a throwaway season anyways. So I also think that could be a reason that they haven't announced who they're like, we're going to talk about Carolina. They just hired Frank Wright this morning.
They interviewed
DJ Humphries, Josh Jones. Those are like probably their best offensive linemen on their team.
And I'm pretty sure they've interviewed coaches.
I'm sure they have. I haven't heard any of the names.
I'm pretty sure they interviewed Frank Wright. Didn't they interview Frank Wright?
I know they interviewed Kirby Smart, but I can't imagine him leaving Georgia to take this job.
Can you pull it up real quick?
Absolutely not.
I am positive they've interviewed people.
Absolutely not. Kirby Smart ain't leaving Georgia, man. He got it set, man.
That's up there with what's his name, Jim Harbaugh. I'm so glad we can stop with the Jim Harbaugh back to the NFL talk. Like that man is not going. Like he is staying at Michigan. He gonna be the head honcho.
All right, so he did. So it looks like they've interviewed Evero, the defensive coordinator for the Denver Broncos, which was not the problem for them this season. It was everything else on the offensive side. They've interviewed Brian Flores, I think.
Okay.
Aaron Glenn, who is the DC over there in Detroit. Vance Joseph.
Okay.
Sean Payton has just been a rumor. I do not believe they've interviewed him. Dan Quinn will probably not be this. He said he's probably going to stay in Dallas.
Yeah, he's staying in Dallas. So even if they,
hey, Dan Quinn's smart as hell because he's like, you know what? If Mike McCarthy can't get it done next year, I'm probably going to take over that spot. Low key. That's real talk. That's real talk.
And who do you? I mean, on top of the head coaching search, I mean, obviously they got to get somebody to replace Cliff Kingsbury, who at least built an offense that was at least somewhat dynamic. Do you think that this team trades away Hopkins in the offseason? Yes or no?
Yes.
They would have to get an offer they absolutely cannot refuse.
Mm-hmm.
I think they do. I think they trade him away. I think he makes a lot of sense.
Green Bay. Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen. I honestly could be wrong. But
I just throwing my 2 cents out there.
As long as we don't have to give up the house for him, I would be for sure thinking about trading him if I'm the Chicago Bears.
Well, give me that first overall pick. A pick swap, basically a pick swap.
I would do that.
We get your third, right? We get your third. You get our first. Give us a first
Hopkins.
Give us Hopkins, maybe a first next year, a second.
I would pull the trigger on that trade in a heartbeat. The problem is that the Arizona Cardinals Cardinals don't need a quarterback. There's no incentive for them to trade up in this year's draft. They need more draft capital, not less.
Well, so look at it this way. We already know that whoever they bring in the quarterback, he kick the tires on Baker Mayfield. I said stop it, but realistically that could happen.
It could have for sure happen.
Realistically, if I'm them, I look at my team like, all right, I don't need a quarterback. You're right, but my defense left a lot to be desired. I don't have an edge rusher. I don't have an edge rusher I can trust. That is like JJ Watt's gone. He retired. What's his name? Chandler Jones is no longer here, so I'm left with Zaven Collins, Isaiah Simmons, who we can't make
Zach
up.
Allen.
Is that right? If I get that first overall pick, it makes more sense to me that Will Anderson fits in Arizona. If I'm Chicago, I get that third overall pick. I can still get Jalen Carter.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't make realistic sense for me for Arizona to trade up and give away future draft assets. It's just
I think they can stay at 3 and get their guy.
Yeah, because they know that the Bears are going to look to trade back. They're going to get whoever they really want at 3, and maybe they'll have to sacrifice a little bit.
They might mess around and trade back twice. Trade back twice. The Bears.
They could be a team, an obvious team to trade back candidate. Somebody falls in love with one of these quarterbacks. I mean, if somebody falls in love with like Will Levis, who's projected to be the third quarterback in this year's class.
All right, Mel Kiper. Okay, Mel.
I think edge rusher. I think edge rusher. I think
if a team were to fall in love with him, I could see the Cardinals be like, "Yeah, you want to trade back with us? We need more picks this year."
I heard the Colts were really in love with Will Levis. In the rumor mill,
he kind of fits the prototypical Colts quarterback. I mean, the big body, strong arm quarterback that the Colts seem to like.
Yeah.
Right, Will,
when I look at the Arizona Cardinals, they're 24th. They had 24 sacks at the edge rusher position. I believe that's fifth lowest in the entire NFL. So edge rushers definitely a need.
JJ Watt had 12 and a half of those, and he just retired. So you're looking at 12 sacks. 12 sacks for the rest of the roster.
Right. Just for reference, what'd you say is they had 24 and a half? 24 and
a half? No, they had 24. Just 24. They had 24.
They had 24. They had, as a team, they had 6 more than what Nick Bosa had by himself.
That's insane.
Right? No, 5.5 more, because Nick Bosa had 18 and a half. Yeah.
So my first round pick for them, at number 3, if they keep it, which I'm pretty sure they will. Will Anderson or Jalen Carter. I think either one of those guys falls to you, you pick them right away. You run to the podium.
I think the one thing that we failed to touch on so far is with the new hire at is it GM? It's GM, right?
Yeah, he's the GM.
So the one thing I liked about him, where he gives his introductory press conference, is he basically calls out Kyler Murray like, "Hey, check your ego at the door, bro. Like, we ain't got time for that. We don't have time for that here." And thank God, because the one thing, and we see, David, we see it a lot in the NBA, and we're kind of starting to see it now in the NFL. This coddling, this hand holding, this stuff got to go. Like it has to go. Like no more hand holding, no more this, no more that. If you're not getting the job done, you got to go. Plain and simple. Like, I understand Kyler Murray got all that money, but that's the issue that people had. Like, you gave him all this money, and what has he accomplished? Like, what has he accomplished?
Not a lot. But this is the guy that comes from that New England Patriots GM staff. I mean, he was the area scout for New England. He was the assistant director of college scouting for a long time.
And one thing we know about New England is what? No nonsense.
Yeah, he's a 4-time Super Bowl champion as an executive.
Like, this is no nonsense. Check your ego at the door. You are not bigger than the team. Like, yeah, this is what he's like trying to bring into that organization. This is what they need. They need some kind of, because he ran all over Cliff Kingsbury and
Steve Keim.
Steve
Keim had all sorts of other problems with his life. So, if you know, you know. But yeah, on top of that, so let's talk about how the Cardinals should approach the draft. So I think this is one of those other teams that get extra draft picks, get extra draft capital, and see if you can build to the draft. Because what happens at quarterback? Like, Baker Mayfield, is that really going to be the starting quarterback of the Arizona Cardinals next season?
Well, we saw 3 different quarterbacks for him after Kyler went down, right? We saw Colt McCoy,
Trace
McSorley, and
somebody else. Was it Daniel Blau, the guy from that played
David
for the
Blau? David Blau.
David Blau was the guy. Yeah.
All right. So no, like if I'm them, like I gotta bring somebody else in, even if it is, Baker Mayfield, which we don't know which direction Carolina's gonna go in. Like, we really don't know.
I would be shocked if they brought back Baker Mayfield back after they traded him, if they released him.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot that he's not there anymore. Where's he at? The Rams, right? He's in LA. Yeah. So, and we'll get to them when we get to them. So, like, yeah, I'll be shocked if the Rams bring him back, considering the stuff they have invested in Matt Stafford. Like, could it happen? Baker Mayfield to the desert? Absolutely. All right. So, like, it's something you got to consider, because I'm not rolling forward with the carousel at quarterback. Like, the revolving door is 1 week, couple weeks here, it's Colt McCoy, couple weeks there, it's Trace McSorley. And then David
here's the available free agents. So let me just go through the list. if any of these guys make sense, because this is probably going to be a 1-year rental, right? A guy who's only going to, because Kyler Murray is going to be the franchise guy. He's just not going to play next season. How about Tom Brady?
No.
No.
You're not signing Tom Brady for 1 year, bro. Like, no.
Sam Darnold.
Sam Darnold, no.
Teddy Bridgewater.
Jimmy Garoppolo.
Maybe.
Jacoby Brissett.
Maybe.
I think Jacoby Brissett makes a lot of sense. This has been his role basically his entire career.
Basically, dude. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Maybe. Right, and we'll get to San Francisco too. Like they got quarterback questions. Like, can you imagine if
Brock wins the Super Bowl?
I talked about this on Tuesday. Like, if Brock Purdy wins the Super Bowl, what do you do?
What do you do?
You go to the NFC Championship game in back-to-back seasons, but not with the guy you traded to draft hall to move up to number 2 overall. That guy has not even been relevant at all to your success the last 2 seasons. So what do you do?
So like you're kind of
trade him.
No, you're stuck.
He doesn't have any value. What are you going to get for him?
You're stuck. Like, bro, they talked about that on ESPN yesterday, like on First Take yesterday. There was an article out there that said that if they consider trading Trey Lance away, they're not even getting a fraction of what they gave up to get him.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, they gave up 3 first-round picks in order to get him. They're not getting 3 first-round picks.
And they're talking about, he's only worth a third. You'd be lucky to get a third pick.
I'm not making that trade. I think we need to.
I'm not making that trade.
You got to rehab his value. I keep him on the roster.
Yeah, he doesn't fit Kyle Shanahan's offense. Anyways, I don't even know why they drafted.
No, he fits the offense because he just adds another element to that run game that's already dangerous. So like the fact that you got Jimmy G and Brock Purdy, like I don't have to worry about them on a read option play because I know they're not going to keep it.
Right.
Yeah. Trey Lance just opens up.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at
David froze.
I think David froze. Yeah, I was gonna say when I look at Trey Lance, like I mean, he does. Yeah, you're right. He does it with the run with his mobility, but I mean. We don't even know like how
we're getting way off
well
track
of a passer he is completion percentage. Yeah. So, anyways, yeah.
Back to the Arizona Cardinals and top 3 priorities when it comes to their offseason. What do you got? What's got to be the priorities for them this offseason?
Well, it's obviously the health of Kyler Murray kind of takes precedent, right? Like that's the top one. You already know that you're not going to have him for basically the whole season, so you might as well just. I swear to God, I better not see Kyler Murray step foot on the field next season. Week 14, 15, 16, 17, whatever it is, Kyler Murray. No, you are not playing football for the entire season. I don't care. So like that's priority number 1. Get him back healthy. Priority number 2 is, to me, got to be acquire more draft capital. That's me. And priority number 3, I guess you can say find a head coach because they don't have one. Like what's the find a head coach / get a sense of direction because what's the plan here? What are we doing? That has to be quote the $1 million question in the room of the Arizona Cardinals. Like, what are we doing? What's the plan?
I think my top priorities are the same as yours, just in a slightly different order. I think number 1's got to be finding a head coach that you believe in. I mean, they obviously believed in Cliff Kingsbury, but that just didn't work out. So you got to find a guy you have the same level of belief that you had in Cliff Kingsbury and bring him in and have him give him some time to build up this roster because this isn't a 1-season fix. Nope. This is probably a team that's going to stink next year too. And then number 2 is you have to acquire more draft capital. Like trading back in this draft makes a lot of sense. You can acquire extra draft picks in this year's draft and next year's draft because this season is most likely going to be a wash for the Arizona Cardinals. I know Arizona Cardinal fans don't want to hear that.
You basically have 2 wash seasons back to back because you lost DeAndre Hopkins for basically half the season.
Yeah.
And you were pretty much.
And my third priority is I think you try to find a trade partner for DeAndre Hopkins. He's not getting any younger, especially for a season where you're probably not going to be competitive. you're not going to be that competitive next season. So if you could find a trade partner for DeAndre Hopkins and get some value for him before he gets a little bit older, especially I think he's a free agent next offseason. So you're going to have to find a way. I would try to trade him this offseason. That's my top 3 priorities. Izzy.
Yeah, no, I agree with you guys. I kind of go a little different direction and kind of swing into like some names that they should probably key in on the draft. I think number 1, yes, head coach. I think it was the same thing as the Houston Texans, as I mentioned yesterday. Number 1 priority, got to get a leader, got to get a head coach. Number 2, I do agree with you guys. You do need to acquire some more draft capital. Whether that's trading DeAndre Hopkins, whether that's moving back in the draft with that third overall pick to acquire 2 first rounders, maybe take that second rounder, which is like the 3rd overall in the second round, and maybe get another 3rd rounder or a late second rounder or something like that. Essentially, I think that's what they need to do. And then the third thing that they need to do, also, I mean, is just address some of these needs. Like interior line, they need to address like the guard positions. Edge rusher, they were the 5th worst team in the league in getting to the quarterback last year. Running back depth, they need some more running back depth. And when I look at like the draft, like I mentioned, first round, Will Anderson or Jalen Carter. That's if you don't move back. I mentioned last week. I mentioned yesterday. If they do move back, you can go get a guy like Andre Carter from Army, who his junior season had 17.5 sacks. You can go get the kid who was like 2nd in NCAA and Tuli. I can't even pronounce his name, from USC. He's more of an interior lineman, but he can actually play on the outside and in the inside. And then when you look at the second round, like you kind of address some of those that running back, cornerback need. I'm gonna throw a name out there that TJ is gonna like. One guy I'll say, Jalen Jones, cornerback at Texas A&M. I saw him in some mock drafts. I actually like him. He's got some real good instincts at the cornerback position. But I'm going to throw a name out here that TJ's going to like. Quan Martin. Everybody talks about Weatherspoon from Illinois, but Quan Martin's that hybrid guy, right? And he can play safety. He can play cornerback. He can play nickel. That's the guy that Arizona kind of needs. You can get him in the 2nd, 3rd round. Keely Ringo from Georgia. And then if you're looking to add some running back depth, possibly if you get like 2 second rounders, maybe Zach Charbonnet, UCLA is going to be there. I like him. I saw some like if you move back and like if you get 2 first rounders for that 3rd round pick or whatever the case is, if you can get like a Bijan Robinson and maybe pair him up and maybe get that other guy. I forget who the guy is from the other edge from Georgia. Other side of Jalen Carter, solid too as well.
I'm seeing Bijan Robinson linked to the Cowboys. That's neither here nor there. But that first guy you said out of Army, like they passed that new
bill.
Yeah, that new.
Yeah, he may have to serve.
No, he doesn't have to now. That's the bill.
Oh, he doesn't have to now?
No, like if you're at one of the academies, if you're at one of the like Army, Navy, or Air Force, and you have a chance to go to the NFL, you can go.
Oh yeah, no. But there's a stipulation. There's a stipulation. I brought this up on the college show though, that they made a law. It was this year that it was getting passed by Congress that they're saying that they're obligated now, like they have to go serve those 2 years now. And I brought this up on the college show a month ago about Andre Carter. It was a big story about him. Because
I thought that was the thing. I thought they made it to the point where like if
I thought so.
It was that. But there's some type of legislation now that Congress passed that the athletes, if you join the academy, that they want you to go serve now. And so I guess it's a big thing. I don't think it's going to happen for Andre Carter. I don't think it's going to pass. But that's something to keep your eye on though.
The guy you're talking about is Nolan Smith, the edge rusher out of Georgia.
Out of Georgia, yeah, that's a guy that you got to keep a name out for. He's got some he's big, he's fast. He's a guy that you got to keep your eye out for the 2nd round, 3rd round, for at least the 2nd round for the Arizona Cardinals.
And yeah, thanks for joining us here for the NFL offseason preview. This time we had the Arizona Cardinals on the clock. We'll be doing more of these next week as we head towards free agency and the NFL draft as we get closer and closer to that Super Bowl as well. But yeah, thank you very much for joining us. Please like, share, and subscribe. And if you do happen to miss us live, as I mentioned, check out that link. You can watch us on a bevy of streaming platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio.
We should also consider. We should also consider doing a mock. Just the first 10 picks. Just the first.
We're gonna do that next week. I haven't given out
cool.
the schedule for next week yet. But yeah, I've been David Huppin. Right there is with the CEO, Israel Rivera, and my co-host, Mr. TJ Hopkins. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining me here on the show. Gentlemen, what do we do here at the Prime, my friends?
We bring
the heat, ladies and gentlemen.
Can it please stop snowing? Like just please. It's not
so bad, TJ. It's not so bad.
Not so bad.
He lives in the cornfields.
The sky has been gray for 3 weeks. I don't remember what the sun looks like. It's depressing.
It's the same way here in Fort Wayne, I'm telling you. But yeah, we'll be back here. Izzy, you doing a show tomorrow? What we got on the calendar?
Oh man, you know what? We're doing a college basketball show, kind of mid-season awards. Doing some early bracketology. Kind of going over the top 25. Stuff like that, going over some big games this Saturday. Guys don't want to miss that.
And Saturday, if you keep an eye out, I'm going to be running a Royal Rumble preview podcast, so you want to keep an eye out for that content. We'll be back here. We're bringing you the heat and bringing you the consistent content 24/7. Y'all have a good night and stay safe out there.
Stay safe.